You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, and welcome to another episode of The WorkWire, where I'm joined by my good friend, the president and CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, welcome. How are you?
Man, I'm a little under the weather, but I wouldn't miss the work wire for anything. So if you hear a little scratchy in my voice or I grab a glass of water real quick, know that I'm here with you. There's so many topics that are pressing for us to talk about today, so I wouldn't miss it unless I couldn't make it.
Awesome. Well, I will take whatever percent of Johnny Taylor we got today, because that is better than good for sure. So, Johnny, when you first came to me with the idea to do the WorkWire, and you wanted to tackle hard issues, we got one today.
We got them. Okay.
We got them. So let me just provide a little bit of context as we usually do, all right? And then we'll kick things off. So needless to say, in the news, everything that's going on in Israel and the war with Hamas and just all of the upsetness that is creating. Obviously, there's a big spillover effect here in the U.S. and globally. So what I want to talk about in today's discussion is we're going to delve into the pressing and complex issue at Microsoft, which sheds light on the challenges faced by global corporations in balancing internal communication, employee expression, and corporate responsibility. So Microsoft has a tool called Viva Engage, and it's kind of typified as Facebook for work. And it's become a microcosm of intense geopolitical conflict, particularly in the wake, as we said, of the Israel-Hamas war. So as employees engage in heated debates, often veering into hostility, we see a stark departure from the platform's intended purpose of strengthening relationships and fostering a sense of belonging for remote and hybrid employees. The situation that Microsoft actually opens up what I think will be a pretty broad conversation here about the role of corporate platforms in political discourse, the responsibilities of global companies in politically sensitive times, and the impact of such internal dynamics on workplace culture and employee well-being. So that's a lot, but it's a lot. So, so we saw the article and it was talking about, that this platform, Viva Engage, was designed to help employees feel more connected to one another and for Microsoft, to really be able to live out, their feeling of belonging that is part of their mission statement, and that they wanted to feel like one Microsoft to all of their employees. Unfortunately, we have issues that can be very divisive at times. So how would you want to start this, Johnny? Where's this take your mind?
Wow. So this is something I've been thinking about. Frankly, if we go all the way back, and I'm making it sound like it was a long time ago, June of 2020, with the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement. And we could go back another 10 years and 20 years. We could go forever. But it is I think it typifies or best illustrates how complex and complicated at once this entire topic is. So this idea that we are one Microsoft, but we have 300,000 employees, right? We almost wonder, and I'm using Microsoft as an example. You can replace the organization. It could be SHRM, it could be Colgate, it could be Coca-Cola, pick a company. But one of the challenges that we have in these notions of becoming one is that at the same time, societally, we've really focused on the individual. Mm-hmm. So one collective, but at the same time, we're telling people, bring your authentic self to work, a phrase I hate, by the way, for this very reason, because you don't know if my authentic person is consistent with company A's, in this case, Microsoft's values. And so when I go back and think about it, no matter what the debate, our diversity means by definition, we're going to have people on either side of any issue. And sometimes there are 3 or 4 issues, right, sides of an issue. And And what I don't think many of us really took into consideration is it's great to create a platform for people to talk when you assume all of us are going to agree. What happens when we disagree? What about the particularly thorny issues where there may be a right, there may be a wrong, maybe the answer's right in between? And that's what we're facing right now is a lot of organizations. This is not limited to Microsoft, but they are literally asking themselves, we created this platform for people to talk about things other than work, and now they're doing it. And we told people that our culture was bring your authentic self to work or bring your whole self to work or whatever. So we've given a platform, we've told them and given them permission, a word that you and I use a lot, to bring that person, and there goes. And so this is not something we shouldn't have predicted. Like I think it started with that line, no good deed goes unpunished. I think we set it up and now employees are taking us literally and they're advancing. So I got a couple of thoughts about it. So I wanted to set that up to say where we are is where I thought we'd be and why a lot of organizations, and I remind you, go all the way back, and I think it was Coinbase or some company. If you think back about a year or two ago where the CEO said, that's it. You come here, there's no conversation about politics at work, et cetera. Like we're only going to talk about
Remember that. Yep.
Remember that? And everyone was in an uproar about that CEO saying, I pay you to come to work. We're going to talk about work and sort of your personal family issues. But other than that, not interested in your political, because these are toxic and they're divisive. And it therefore affects productivity at work and people's happiness. And I don't want you to talk about it. And a lot of people attacked him for that. In fact, fast forward, maybe he was onto something. And I was one of the few people who said, not sure that's the way I'd run my company, but I'm also not prepared to say he's wrong, because I do understand that with the level and intensity of diversity that we have in our organizations, perspective, it's more than just race, gender, national origin, but just perspective and viewpoint, that this is going to become very difficult to manage, Bob. So here we are. And I think we as organizations now, including the Microsofts of the world, have got to say, one, do we want people to have these discussions that actually have nothing to do with them doing their jobs going forward? Two, if we decide to do that, do we want to provide a company platform for them to do it on? Because of course you can do Facebook after work and join any Facebook group you want. You don't have to be on the Microsoft version I shouldn't say Microsoft version, but Microsoft's internal Facebook. Yes. You don't have to do that. And then thirdly, if one decides, yes, I want people to have these conversations. Two, I'm going to provide the platform on which they will have these, then we've really got to spend a significant amount of time setting up the ground rules of engagement. And you and I have talked about civility and being respectful, and not like we've got to set the rules up and literally be prepared to say to people, you can't participate here if you're not going to follow these rules of engagement. Because one, you don't have a right to use this. It's a company provided tool. And we think that it will do more destruction and divisiveness than unification. And that's not our goal. So I put a whole bunch in there, but you follow me? That's what companies are going to have to do, is to start with fundamentally, do I even want to create an environment where people are talking about these things? Two, do I want them to talk about them? And three, if I do A and B, then C is, what are the rules of engagement? And you got to be prepared to hold people accountable for it.
So you're right. I mean, this will be a recurring theme on WorkWire, because this is the nature of work now. And as you say, this bring your whole self and all the stuff. But I mean, look, like if we were in the office together and October 7th happened,
yes.
Hey, Johnny, holy crap. Did you see what happened in Israel yesterday? Can you believe this? I mean, we would be talking, we've always talked about current events and things that are happening at work.
Right.
What I think is very different now, and it probably feeds into what you were saying, is this notion that, you should hear my point of view on this. I have a right at work to be loud and proud on whatever my favorite hot button issue is, which is different than back in the day where like maybe I went to lunch with you and we would talk about, holy crap, man, can you believe? And like we
Right.
could commiserate or talk about whatever we thought. Or there was like, that ain't what you talk about at work. We can talk, right? We can talk about HR, we can talk about accounting, we'll talk about sales, but like I'm not talking about race issues or the war in Vietnam or like pick any issue. And
That's right.
yet, and now, and this is what I'd love to get your thoughts on this is like, no, work, whether it's electronic, like on Aviva Engage or in person or wherever, is like, no, this is the appropriate forum to have these kinds of conversations. Or are we actually trying to run the business that is the business that's paying everybody's paycheck? And if we're off, one could argue, I'm not saying this, if we were off task
Right.
talking about these other things, is that really what I'm paying you to do today?
Well, I think the answer is easy. No. Now, whether or not you decide, fundamentally, I pay you to work and you work, therefore I pay you. I mean, that's kind of has always been the relationship. We've extended this a bit. And part of it has to do with working from home. So now we've gone into people's homes as opposed to there being a workplace and a non-workplace or personal cut. Like all of this we've blurred. And so that's one of the outcomes, if you will, unintended consequences of remote work. But it's bigger than that. If you think back, and now I'm going to date myself and you, we were very clear in our lives about compartmentalizing our personal lives from our work lives. Even this full conversation that you and I have had around pay transparency. When I grew up, you didn't talk about your pay. That just wasn't, Bob, I knew what I made, you knew what you made, but the two didn't cross, especially as you got into salaried professionals. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, if you both were working in a fast food restaurant, you make $8 an hour, I make $8 an hour, because everybody makes $8 an hour in that job, right? But now people share. We have a culturally acceptable world where people share their opinions, their pay, their love secrets. I mean, they share everything. And so that has created a very, very different dynamic that I don't think we've thought about, right? I mean, and one day I hope we can talk on WorkWire about, off-duty behavior, for example. The teacher who was just recently fired for having an OnlyFans account. I was amazed, and I don't want to get off on that, but she says, that's what I do on my own time. And or the construction worker who went to the Charlottesville marches and was fired, even though his employer just said you shouldn't have been there. Like, that's my time. So there's a lot going on where we've melded work and our personal lives, and as a result, we're living with all of this right now, right? And it's really, as I said, complicated and complex. But to answer your question, I think a lot of employers, and I'm hearing this right now, are saying, I'm not so sure this idea that I had that we would be the place, be it virtually, online, socially, in person. I'm not so sure this is not proving to be counterproductive. What happens is if a group of employees get together in the lunchroom, in the hallway, or online, and they spend an hour engaged in a heated debate about something that has nothing to do with my workplace and my work. And worse, when the conversation is over, they now don't like the colleague that they sit next to. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, they cannot collaborate and innovate. And teamwork has been eviscerated as a result of that. Companies are now saying, I'm not sure that's what I want. Not because I, Mr. Voss, Mr. CEO, or Mrs. CEO, wants to control what you talk about, but because I need my work done. And this is now
Mm-hmm.
undermining what I'm trying to achieve, which is efficiency and productivity and ultimately profitability. So that's what all CEOs that I've talked with and CHROs are now starting to say. Maybe this has gotten a little out of hand. On one hand, we want to engage diverse audiences and we want diverse workforces and we want people to be able to talk about their lives. But when I'm losing 25% productivity because you're off debating, the meaning of life in my workplace, that's not a good deal and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, because obviously DEI is a giant topic that you're on top of every day, and I love your focus on the inclusion piece first.
Yes,
So it is fundamentally in the business's best interest to have a diverse workforce to see the world from different points of view. You lead a
yes,
multinational organization, Johnny. This isn't just the US and
that's right.
men, women, black, white, gay, straight, like whatever, but it's like
Palestinian and Jewish. I got both.
right. So, but it's you've got the map covered with people who have centuries of points of view on people from different parts of the world
Right.
based on wars and other things, and so like some of this is unavoidable. The diversity part is really good. The
That's right.
understanding the world from other people's perspective is really good. It seems to me, in the context of the business, like I want to hear your voice, because you're going to help make our business better, because I now understand a consumer's perspective, a need state, how a message might be received, not
Right.
intended to deliver it that way, but if that's how you're going to hear it, like I need to know that and be sensitive to it. That's all good, but to me, that's all in the context of the business. It's when these topics actually bleed over the four walls of the business and actually
Yes.
aren't relevant necessarily. And somebody listening to this could argue and say, Bob, these issues are highly relevant, so I don't want to diminish it. But at some point, we've strayed so far away from selling software.
Right.
This isn't what we're talking about anymore.
Well, I'm a lawyer by training, and in constitutional law, we talk about the slippery slope. That's what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
And you have to be really, really careful. And again, it's not just Microsoft. All of us are like, we told people, well, first of all, we pursued diversity. Check, you got it. And we forgot that the real focus should have been, okay, how do you take all of these diverse people and make them feel included? That's actually very difficult. It is far easier to have a monolithic, group of people who have the same experiences, same backgrounds. That is a much easier group to manage and get more productivity out of. There's some interesting research that would suggest that, at least initially, when you
That's right.
introduce a more diverse workforce, you actually lose in the short
That's right.
term productivity, et cetera, because the group is now trying to get comfortable with each other versus it's like my friends in a band, and if you take the band that knows each other, they come in and tomorrow they can jump on stage and jam. But when you introduce a new player who is not a drummer who isn't part of the normal troupe, then you got a problem. You overcome it, but it takes time to get that person up to
Right.
speed and for them to meld with the team. Well, you got the same dynamic. So Bob, where we're all seeing is, and I think the answer really rests in, if an organization decides it's going to do this and it's pretty ambitious, give employees a platform to do it, whether it's online through this Aviva product or in person, like having brown bags where you have employees come into a conference room and tackle a really thorny issue, that you must proceed with caution. And proceed at your own peril, because this is when you ask people to bring their authentic selves to work, they're going to bring it. And in the process of doing it, someone has a chance of being pissed off, hurt, whatever. And you just have to manage it. So we tell folks all the time, if you're going to do it, set up the ground rules up front. Here are the guardrails. Like, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to say whatever you think simply because you feel passionately about it.
Johnny,
There's
back on legal stuff. I'm sorry. Does Microsoft, or the company? We're not picking on Microsoft at all. Does a company have a legal obligation to protect me from? This is sort of the safe space. Like I don't feel comfortable here anymore because the vitriol in the volume is such that I don't feel comfortable working here anymore. Does the company have a responsibility to keep some kind of a lid on this for everybody?
Well, yeah, part of it, and I don't want to I don't want to dispense legal advice to anyone, but I will say this: we have obligations to provide people a harassment-free environment, a non-hostile environment. I mean, those are terms of art in the legal context. And so you could not, for example, convene a session that men are from Mars and women are from Venus or whatever, and allow the male employees to trash the female employees
Right.
in the name of saying no, and then think that there might not be potential legal consequence that flows from that. So absolutely, the employer, and that's where these guardrails come in, the employer must proceed with a lot of caution if you're going to allow people to get together and tackle thorny issues. Then you had better make sure that you establish the rules. Because yes, I fundamentally believe, and I'm not speaking to a specific instance at Microsoft, but if you allowed a debate, any company A, on social media amongst employees to debate the Hamas and Palestine and Israel, if you allowed that without any rules of engagement, you could absolutely be creating risk of religious discrimination in violation of Title VII, depending upon where that conversation went and how people were impacted by it. So that's the other thing. That's the legal answer. But let me say, stay away from the legal answer. Fundamentally, people should not have to come to work and be distracted by these conversations. Like, it's one thing to get a diverse perspective. It's another thing to come under attack.
But another lens into this is I want to work at a company whose values align with mine. I want to work at a company that, has purpose.
Can I just tell you that drives me? I'm sorry to interrupt you. There is no way you're going to have 100% values alignment with your employer. And the companies that make that promise are doing themselves in. I'm going to say that again, because anyone listening here, when we make these statements as HR and business leaders and people managers, they are so ridiculous. I've said this to you, Bob. I love my mother to death, but we don't have 100% full alignment on values. And so this notion that you think that a company of 300,000 employees can have the same values that are aligned with yours. You may have overlap and a lot of the things, but by definition, the company is not likely to have the same values. And let me go a level deeper. And sure as hell, it's not realistic to think that every employee in the organization is going to have the same values. Like, that is just inconceivable that you would bring that much diversity together and think that somehow you're going to have full values alignment.
I know. And yet that is, to use your term, the slippery slope that companies are trying to navigate. Is we want to be, socially aware, socially responsible, sensitive to, the issues that we believe our employees care about. And yet, as you say, that's almost a fool's errand, because you can't do that. Or you basically just said, I don't care about diversity because I'm willing to exclude everybody who doesn't think this way.
On that particular topic, on that particular day, because these things, as you know, are sort of a moving target. What is the norm? What's societally okay? The narrative on any given day on any particular topic.
I was going to say, what's the topic today? Is it abortion? Right. Is it Israel?
Gun laws?
Is it guns? Is it whatever?
Whatever. And so that's the problem, is we really do have to step back. I think this is a really important point that you raise, that we as employers have got to step back and ask ourselves, what do we really mean when we use these catch-all phrases? I was just in a meeting a few minutes before joining you today, and one of the employees threw out, well, I don't feel psychologically safe.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what does that even mean to that employee? And we as a company, some of our managers in this particular business that I just left, they throw the term around, but the problem is everyone's not clear about what that means. Psychological safety doesn't mean at all times you will never be confronted with situations where your work
Johnny,
is...
what if you yelled at me for doing a bad job?
Right, precisely. But what we've done is we've gone out, we've set these grandiose statements that I don't think we've really thought through carefully, and therefore people take you up on it. I mean, back to authentic self. If you tell me to bring my authentic self to work, then in the middle of any of these hotly contested conversations, maybe just go off in an expletive laced rant. That's not who you want. But I may say, that's how I am. That's who I am authentically. When I get mad at something, I give them hell and I curse them out and da da da. That's not it. We have to put rules of civility around this. And employers have got to do that in person and online.
Yeah.
And, I think there's something unique about the online environment, because I think people who would never, ever say the things that they say to people's faces, although increasingly that's changing. But being behind a screen allows you to get a little bit more courageous, almost irresponsibly so. And it's playing itself out and doing a lot of damage. So I'm not one who says we should go back to, don't talk about anything but work at work, because that's not human.
Right.
Okay. By the same token, I am fundamentally concerned about us having gone too far. And we have these tools, which is what prompted this conversation, where people can go real far for 24/7. They can sit up at night and just battle with their fellow colleagues over a topic over which they will never reach agreement. I'm not sure that's productive.
Yeah. And maybe just start to wrap this up a little bit. As you're talking with HR executives, what is HR taking the lead? Should HR be taking the lead on helping create these ground rules?
Right. The management team collectively needs to take the lead, because this is a question around its culture.
Yeah.
But HR has to be the nurturer, the facilitator of these discussions. And what I'm advising CHROs who we talk with is, it's your job to go and sit down with your CEO and ultimately him or her and their entire direct report team and say, let's tackle this. How are we going to address this? What is our culture going to be? What are the rules of civility, engagement, et cetera? And then once there's alignment, roll that out throughout the organization, but thinking about every one of the consequences. And that's where strong HR comes in, is they can say, I know this sounds good, but let me tell you where, if you go to its illogical end, where this could end up, right? So HR's job is to push and prod and test and pressure test any decision a company makes around, how we want our employees to engage on controversial topics, or frankly, any non-work topic.
Yeah. So you need to get a drink. We talked about Coinbase earlier, and it seems
Yes.
like a reasonable place to go is, we can talk about things are going to come up. As you say, this is just part of being human. Every topic is going to come up, but having ground rules around civility, which I think is sort of our buzzword here. And then, I know one of your favorite words is being empathetic, empathy,
That's
right?
Yep.
And
Empathy goes both ways.
yeah, exactly. But what you're saying, the way you're saying it, Johnny, I'm starting to find a little offensive. I'm happy to go to a new topic, right? I mean, but let's understand that if your colleague raises his or her hand and says, I'm starting to not enjoy this conversation, can we please stop? It's kind of like no means no.
Right. But now, and I got it just before we run, that same argument, remember, there is a line of DE&I training, especially when it comes to race, where they said it's okay for members outside of the race to feel uncomfortable. So the standard isn't always stop when someone feels uncomfortable, because a lot of current DEI training doesn't make some populations particularly comfortable. And we've said that's okay. So this is the point, is we have to very thoughtfully, I'm, by the way, making no judgment on any of this. I am saying that HR practitioners need to work with their business leaders and their people managers to think through how this actually can play out, in its worst case scenario. That's the key here, Bob. It's not say you shouldn't go here, you shouldn't go there, but be very, very much aware of where it could go and what the consequences are likely to be if it goes there.
Well, and so I appreciate you mentioning that. That's actually, one of the great qualities that I admire about you, that you really do that very, very well, and you model it for SHRM members to do exactly that, to not be an order taker, but to say, wait a minute, that sounds good, but let's kind of walk around the issue. Let's sort of, there may be some unintended consequences, or let's take this to its logical conclusion. Is this really where we want to end up? If not, let's think about it before we go forward. So, Johnny, I appreciate your expertise. These are hard topics, and I'm going to misquote somebody here, but every complex problem has a simple solution. Pregnant pause, and it's wrong.
And it's wrong.
and so to make simple pronouncements would be silly on a topic like this. But this is the world that we live in, where these extremely contentious, very personal issues are what are being talked about at work. And as leaders, we need to help, govern how those conversations go so that the work of work is actually getting done.
How about
right?
that?
And these conversations are happening when and where they need to happen, not to the exclusion of work getting done. Amen.
Bingo. You're here.
There you
Here.
Awesome. Johnny, thank you so much. Listeners, viewers, thank you guys so much. Would really encourage you guys, and there'll be an announcement at the end of this, but if you're not a member of SHRM, please go check out shrm.org. Tons of great resources, great organization led by the great Johnny C. Taylor Jr. But we thank you for your time and your attention today. If you're listening to this on a podcast, please rate and review. Same on YouTube. And with that, Johnny, go get a drink of water. I hope you feel better soon.
I'll see you again on the next
Thank
Word.
you. Yes, sir.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.